there'll be something bigger, which will make 207 look like a joke.
Like a Christmas party, he says.
That's what it is. Now, that's a very serious statement. It's a warning to the country, and mainly to the current leadership, that should not dare to think of such a thing. Now, going back to 207, it was very complicated, and there was a lot of failure on responsible people, because what happened was not sudden. It was long planned. And that is why some people did not vote in their particular place. They had to create special voting places because of the... so there was failure at that time. Would it mean that if that's going to be, that there will be a bigger failure? If that's going to be the case. In this case, then the IBC is an irrelevancy.
Okay.
In the same way that Kivuito was an irrelevancy to the bigger picture.
Okay.
And some of us remember a few things. And people, before the election, they were talking. This and this will happen. Okay? In the same way. So it is a very loaded statement of concern. And we need to find out whether the same kind of behavior as was between 205 and 207 is going on. People accumulating arms and special things, harassing people, and even making statements. We know that there are politicians who have already made worse statements than what Gachagua.
Right.
We know that. And for some reason, they were not noticed. If that happens, then we all need to be alert. And more than that, the people in leadership really do need to go back to the drawing board. What's going on? What are you doing? And if they are doing it deliberately, doesn't another matter. If they are doing it out of ignorance, it's still another matter.
Okay.
Then they should be able to find better advisors if they are not having good advisors there.
Okay.
And my friend Barak is a communication expert. You can help them to communicate. They'll say things properly, because sometimes we make mistakes of some people speaking immaturely and sending the wrong signals everywhere. But the bottom line is that the country is not in a very good situation right now. And it appears as if it might gravitate to a worse situation than it is. And if it does, then we need to be careful how we say things.
Right.
And the country is already in a campaign mood, because there is no need of pretending that, no, it's already, they are already campaigning
Okay.
in a very big way. And so as they are campaigning, we should expect a few things.
Okay.
Sobriety on the part of the government and also their opponents.
Right.
And that way we might be able to safeguard the country.
Dr. Barak, I imagined that if we're going to talk about Rigathi Gachagua at all this evening, then it would be about him, unveiling his party, Democracy for the Citizens Party, first. But here we are talking about his utterances that, many leaders have castigated, that a majority of Kenyans would say that perhaps it's a wake-up call to the other leaders and the IEBC indeed to deliver a free and fair election. But at the same time, we have seen such utterances landing people to levels of the ICC. Why would the former deputy president lazily take it this way? Was there a better way of framing his concern than what he did?
It is both, actually. We can speak about the unveiling of the party and the utterances because they go hand in glove. And we could preface that behind the knowledge or reminding ourselves of the fact that 2027 is going to be 2 decades after 2007, And therefore, we have got an adult population that is going to be voting in 2027 for the first time, that has got no memory of what happened in 2007.
Okay.
They hear about it as hearsay, they read about it in history books, and they hear those who are there speaking about it, and therefore the message perhaps does not even begin sinking, even as the former DP says that 2027 will look like a Christmas party. And at this point, we need to invite everybody to have a look at the WACI report on the post-election violence, just to have a glimpse of what happened at that time. Rigathi Gachagua is coming from a place where he was ensconced in power and comfort and privilege that goes with those things, or so he thought. We do not know the exact triggers of the differences between himself and William Ruto. They increasingly look like personal differences. Personal differences that they failed to resolve, and which, in my view, I have spoken maybe fairly speculatively, but I think it is informed, mature speculation, that it's got everything to do with competition for opportunities to do business with government. Each time you listen to him, he's talking about business with the government.
And therefore not national concern.
And therefore they are not exactly national questions, questions of national concern. Each time you have listened to President William Ruto, and they talk about humongous sums of money, almost as if they were little change, that he asked me to give him 10 billion so that he could resign. He wanted me to take 2 billion so that I could resign. So he's getting into this opposition space with some significant levels of anger towards William Ruto. Anger because what was expected, or what they promised each other, did not materialize, and anger into which a lot of people who have nothing to do with the differences between the two of them could find themselves being sucked into. I have seen this evening in your news footage a member of parliament, I believe from Usonga or Alego or both, saying things to the effect that he should be very careful when he's saying that, because his community is found everywhere in the country. I do not know how the community in which Rigathi Gachagua was born and brought up comes into this thing of being cautioned that you are everywhere. I think Rigathi Gachagua has been blatantly reckless, and I also think that MP Atandi, he's called, is exceedingly reckless as well. Kenyans must feel free to live anywhere. We have just been talking about accessing the Tanzanian territory. We must have that charity beginning here.
And that brings me to the next question, that how do we get Kenyans, avoid a scenario where they will fall culprit? Because we might not care much about what is ongoing between President William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua, what transactional business they have. But then again, reality is that as of now, while we expect other parties to sprout or other options to sprout, reality is that we have them as the options as of now. How do we protect ourselves as Kenyans from falling prey or culprit to this kind of politics? Because then when you hear what it is that Riggy says and the members of parliament react in the manner that they do, then certainly you will wake up to a buzz in the internet tomorrow with Kenyans literally reacting and falling prey to this. Prof.
Well, I think it's a simple thing. It's called good education from baby class to the university.
Okay.
Unfortunately, right now, our education is not doing very well. It's going down the drain. That's the unfortunate part. Because if we had a common curriculum that stresses the Kenyan identity,
right,
that's available to every child and not just a few people, it will take time. And sometimes people like referring to Mwai Kibaki, when he became president, and what did he say? Watoto wasome. And there were a lot of watoto, some of them very old. They went and found free.
Free, yeah.
Those are the Gen Zs.
Right, yeah.
And you can see the thinking of the Gen Zs is many times different from the elders.
Right.
And although we are beginning to see some of them are already
compromised also, yes.
We've seen that. But when they went up last year, you could see that freedom,
right,
the education they had, and the kind of books they read that made them think. And they were told, or they learned, that when things are going wrong, you don't keep quiet.
Yes.
You say things are
going wrong.
Are going wrong. And they give the evidence. That's what happened last year. Whether it is by choice or inadvertent, in the last 2 years, our education system is, which means that
going down the tube.
Which means that people are not learning anything. In primary schools, in secondary school, there are no computations.
Universities,
in the universities now they are collapsed.
Right.
All we are hearing are that the vice chancellors and other chancellors have messed up universities. They are no longer the citadel of integrity and knowledge. And if your education system is collapsed, the country is collapsed. So maybe we need to figure out how do we go back to what it was some years ago. If you are fit to be in the university, you went to the university.
Right.
It's not for you to pay. No. Because you are an asset to the country.
Right.
And so go. Now we have that anomaly of people who qualify to be medics. There was a time you were told, which was bad thinking, that the reason people have no jobs is because they studied history or literature.
Like myself.
So we are sitting there wondering.
Like the two of you.
We have so many TVETs, so many technical colleges and universities, so many doctors who are jobless today.
Right.
Engineers who are jobless. Plumbers. So why, how come?
Right.
These people did not study history. And maybe that's why there is a problem.
Okay.
Because what you need is somebody to look at the big picture and synchronize things. So that because the running the country is a policy position, it's a thinking, it's not technical. Okay?
Absolutely, Professor. And we have got now the chief custodian at State House, who believes that subjects like history are useless. And I declare very proudly, Professor, that I studied history, literature, and religion. And I think they have made me who I am. I do not boast that I'm very special, but that helps me to interpret the world, to see the world, what's happening today, what's likely to happen tomorrow, how the past, the present, and the future are tied up together.
Right.
So there's that problem, that challenge of having square pegs in round holes. People whose philosophy of government is about primitive accumulation of wealth, that the government will not have a single project it engages in if there are no selfish personal returns.
And Ndindi Nyoro reminds us today
Yes.
that there's a lot of borrowing going on in silence.
Secretly.
And he's placed for that matter.
Secretly.
And I'm worried.
Irresponsible.
Irresponsible for that matter. And perhaps what is being borrowed is not, channeled to development. What are we likely? I mean, perhaps, something
it is odious debt. But you asked a very fundamental question. What do we do?
Yeah.
And Professor spoke of education. We have very limited time between now and 2027
to capitalize on education.
Capitalize on education.
Okay.
So we must embrace alternative parts of education, which is civic education in this context. And within the remaining 20 or so months, we must clearly educate ourselves to understand that we are not cast between a duality of the Rutos and the Wamunyorus, and also to appreciate the fact that there has been a surge in the youthful population, in that in 2027 the projections indicate that age 18 to age 35 are going to constitute at least 70% of the population. It is up to this 70% of the population to discover its mission for this country and to deliver it.
Unfortunately, it appears as though we are clouded with this one-time euphoria. And it's just, on face value, perhaps not getting into the in-depth of things. But every other, political party that is sprouting up, the idea is Ruto must go. Are we really going to get it right? And maybe that could be the clarity.
It's a good starting point.
It's a good starting point, okay.
Because, and I believe myself that Ruto ought to go, and Ruto really must go. Is a very divisive factor. I was present when his manifesto was being fashioned, contributed some thoughts to it, and I'm aware that as soon as he got into State House, he threw away that manifesto, the philosophy that informed it, and embraced a completely different mission when he was telling the country that he was a man on a mission. It was probably the mission of overtaking the Kenyatta, the Moi, and the Kibaki families in wealth, that he should, within the period that he's there, accumulate more than they ever did. When I listened to the Speaker of the Senate, Emerson Kingi, saying that in the space of 2 years, William Ruto has done more than what Uhuru did in 10 years, I understand him to be saying that the cartels have accumulated more than was accumulated in 10 years under President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Right.
But more constructively, the youthful population, together with older generations who are of the same mind, must give this country new leadership and a new direction in 2027. Talking about violence finally, the violence is already there. The language that we are hearing is the language of violence. The abductions that we are seeing are already activities of violence. The divide between those in government and the opposition is already a structural violent reality, and therefore it can only transform into higher forms of violence, and they need to be stemmed, as Professor says, through education.
All right, of course, God forbid that we fall into such levels. Dr. Barak Muluka, all right?
You people in the media are very important. And in this short time, the country needs you.
Right.
In a big way.
In a very big way.
Not episodic instances like today.
Right.
But more, because we need to expose the public and make sure that people know the dangers, the threat. And it's good for people to speak openly and say what they think is wrong. Because that's part of the... And the more you speak about what is wrong, the more tolerant you become.
Okay.
The more you restrict people from saying what they think, that's intolerance, and that's the direction towards more violence.
Okay.
Making people desperate.
Right.
So we should avoid pushing people to desperation. And one way is let people talk.
All right.
Whatever they want.
And even as they talk, I ask this evening, are we becoming a nation that is, verbally reckless? Dr. Barak, in his article today, speaks of certain incidences where we have seen, the leaders, what he says is betraying people's trust in justice system. He highlights at least 3 or 4, cases where he says there's a senior police, and we have seen that because then I remember carrying that story. Officer tells the nation on live TV regarding the recent gunning down of Kasipul Member of Parliament Charles Ongondo, where whoever ordered the shooting must be very thick. You send someone to kill an MP and you let the killer still alive freely until he is arrested. Normally, those sent to do such jobs always will proceed to silence or perhaps kill these individuals. He highlights another case where a magistrate scoffs at the futility of human rights crusade in Kenya. The crusader is advised to give up his activism because the police then will proceed to kill them. He equally does not forget what President William Ruto said the other day when he says that all abductees have now been reunited by their family, contrary to the reports that we have today. I think I have personally, thereafter, actually on that very actual day when he said that, I still carried a story of Brian, it should be Brian of Nakuru, whose family is still asking about his whereabouts. And at this point, he says this when there is also visiting visiting head of state. And later on, of course, it is countered by, activists and human rights commissions, across in the country. And then you ask yourself, in connection as well to what it is that we've talked about with the utterances of Rigathi, are we really calculating for some of the things that we say? And especially when we are talking about those ones that are custodians of the nation?
I think President Ruto needs better advisors.
Okay. Until when? We have talked about this from the time he got...
They also say that he doesn't have any advisors.
Or communication experts that are good enough.
Communication.
At least at this point, his advice.
His advisors. He has almost a ministry of advisors.
Yes.
There are so many of them. But you wonder what it is that they do, other than get a good salary. But in reality, President Ruto is his own worst enemy. He says things that leave people wondering, what has he said?
Right.
So when he said that now people, the abducted have been de-abducted
to their homes and to their families.
Firm and clear instructions.
They didn't know what he was saying because that's an admission that he knew something about this thing.
Okay.
Almost the way Mutulu was saying, the guy knew. But it was the first time that the president has openly admitted that he knew something about it. And therefore he has decided to stop it now.
Okay.
So the question is, why didn't he stop it before? Why now? Is another thing. His other previous statements have also raised questions. Just like Big G, or Rigathi G, Remember when he said Mambo ni matatu?
3 things.
3 things.
And people say, what? Say, you either go to jail or get the hell out of Kenya or go to heaven. Now, those kind of, what did he say? And so it get people jarring. And the time he talked about the sword, he was given a sword. Very nice sword, ceremonial sword. But getting the sword was not the issue. It's what he said its purpose was. Say kukatakata mboga. If it's not for mboga, what is it for?
What is it for?
The language itself has been just as reckless, one would say.
It's violent. It's violent language.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you have some people, when he's there, and they're using violent language. and they get claps there.
And people clap.
Right.
And that I've always wondered.
And laughed. I mean, most of them clapped and laughed along.
Yes, yeah. Because in their mind, they don't see themselves as victims. It's somebody else who is to be the victim.
Right.
But I think, Professor, they clap out of trauma. We need psychiatrists, people who and psychologists, people who are experts in that space of shock and response to shock. That people are shocked, they're traumatized, and they will laugh and clap, not because they are embracing that which is being said,
Right.
but it appears to be the most spontaneous way to respond to that kind of situation. And when
no wonder you look when we are laughing at what it is that Prof is saying, because I mean, it's the manner that he says it, you know.
Yeah, we are traumatized. And this is really disturbing for the current regime because it campaigned explicitly on that ticket that there would be no more traumatization of the citizens, there would be no more abductions, there would be no more disappearances, and this enforced migrations of people. It was stated very clearly. I've heard the president tell the opposition kwamba nitawakaranga, nitawakaranga, and we have not had time to subject that to interrogation. What exactly does he mean when he says nitawakaranga on the one hand, and what does Rigathi Gachagua know on the other hand, that he then counters that nitawakaranga thing? That mkarango could be a whole cocktail of things, starting with the constitution of the IBC, starting with the disenfranchisement, moving on to disenfranchisement of voters, looking at the confusion within the IBC. When these 75% of Kenyans aged between 18 and say, okay, a portion of it, 18 to maybe something like 23, 24, do they have national identity cards? Are they going to be registered as voters? What about the opening up of the borders so that people are going to be registered as Kenyan citizens? What about the accumulation of funds for elections? What's all this Mkarango thing going to be about? Professor, I agree with you entirely that our media have got their assignment cut out nicely and neatly for them. They must educate the masses that it's not about the money that somebody is going to come and give you that's going to determine how and whether you are going to vote or not. We must educate ourselves if we are going to move out of this situation, because my considered view is that the country cannot afford another 5 years of this. It will be total collapse.
Okay, and we have just highlighted extreme cases of, you know, these utterances. Lest we forget, we have an active, fully functional National Cohesion and Integration Commission right here in the country. Sleeping in the job? On the job?
Reverend Sam Kobe has a big job. He doesn't seem to be doing.
That he's not begun doing, or what?
From the time the commission was created, in response to 2007, 2008,
Right.
because it's one of those, the Kofi Annan.
There was a lot of hate speech conversation in the country.
That you monitor this and this. I think the first monitor was Kebunja.
Kibunjia, Zalendo Kibunjia.
They used to call him what the speech cop. They've tried, but they are not visible.
Right.
They are not felt. And they cannot be felt when the people who do those bad things, bad speeches are the leaders who are untouchable. See, that's where the weakness is.
Right.
And we've seen somebody say where is the cohesion committee? And sometimes they send a message to somebody who finds an excuse for not being there. And then that's the last we hear about it.
Yeah.
The commission needs to be a little more active, but it does need the support of those it's supposed to be monitoring. And those who are supposed to be monitored are not going to help the commission because they can cut off the funds.
Oh, yes.
You know, and they find you need to do this, you don't need that. In fact, we are going to change commissioners now. So when the minute we hear that the commissioners will be changed, you know, that's a threat. And all you do is somebody in parliament says, this, tuondoe hii, tuweke hii. We've had politicians say very reckless things. That we are going to change the constitution and increase its term to 7 years, or 24 years.
Yeah.
Somebody who said about 24. That's a reckless statement, and
it's actually a violent statement.
It's a violent statement.
Yeah.
And then you have somebody else, and who is saying that the votes should not count. Even if you vote this way, it will not happen.
Yeah.
Someone has said we will staff the boxes.
And were these people called to account? No. So the ingredients for chaos.
That's somebody who is saying that is a legislator in the Senate telling us that it doesn't matter. We will make sure that the second term happens. We will staff the boxes. That person has been captured on camera. And that footage is in all these media houses. It is on the internet. And because nothing happens to him, it goes into the next spiral. And it carries on and on.
Right.
But it should worry us very significantly that we still do not have the IEBC commission in place. The commissioners are not there. We are now in court again. I was here earlier.
Tempted to ask that.
Said we would be going to court over this, even before we knew who was going to be there. There are so many tasks. Are we going to have boundaries delineations? Are we going to have voter registration in a manner that is free, fair, and credible?
Right.
What technology are we going to use? The officers who are going to use that technology, have they been recruited? Have they been trained to use that technology? Has it been tested? Is its integrity and stability established? Are the funds there for it? What about voter education? Are we educating the voters? What about securing the election exercise itself from A to Z?
Right.
And is somebody likely to benefit out of this entire confusion? If somebody is likely to benefit, who is that somebody?
Okay, interesting. As we come to a close, gentlemen, at the heart of it, perhaps all this, other things not fixed, a visionary opposition is critical. And when I say a visionary opposition, then I am looking at 2027 as, at those ones that would be challenges to the current regime. I mean, if Kenyans feel like they are dissatisfied with the regime at that very point, then of course they would need challenges that are visionary, that are, ideology-based. Do you suppose in what we have right now, we have a face that stands to give Kenyans a better option? Maybe individuals, maybe parties?
No, they are looking for each other.
They're still looking for each other. Okay, interesting. All right.
They have, right now, Kalonzo appears to be in the front. And the others, whether they will agree to support him. When the time comes, they'll sit on a table and decide what have you brought on the table, what have you brought on the table, or even if not what I brought on the table, it's what will I get if I support you. Yeah? And you see all those people who are calling themselves opposition, they are all looking for something. One way that William Ruto might defeat them, and there's a possibility, is to convince every one of them that he or she can be president. Therefore, be a candidate. Why? Because of the belief that things are so bad for Ruto that he has already lost it. So if he has already lost the election, the question is, who will take his job?
Right.
And as they are debating who will take the job, then they all start fighting each other. That's a very high possibility. But assuming they are aware of that, then they are preparing for sharing. They say, you be the deputy, you be the prime cabinet secretary, which is not their constitutional, but it is there in practice. You be the Speaker of the House. You be the Speaker of the what?
Of the National Assembly,
of the Senate.
Yeah.
And you know the big jobs.
Right.
They will agree on that, not even we are having to write about it, so that they can say, okay, you are now the candidate, on the understanding that when we win, each of us gets something.
Okay.
That's what's going on. And you cannot be assured of something unless you have a position, you have a party of your own. So Gachagua's party is part of that bargaining chip.
Right.
And then you have, you mentioned Dede Nyoro, which is also looking for a niche for himself.
Right.
And he's cultivating it. He's the one who talks about taxes and loans, and how odious they are. Try to come out as somebody who has a position of his own that others may not be very comfortable talking about. They don't know. They're incompetent. But do they have a particular ideology? It's hard to say. Whether they will come together and formulate one. Raila Odinga is still a force. He has some following, but not what he used to be.
Right.
He's been.
In fact, there's trouble within his own party as it stands.
He's weakened.
Yeah.
There's rebellion within the party.
He's a limping old lion. And you know, when the lion begins limping because it's aged, the alpha male that has been there for 10, 15 years, when it begins limping, the younger ones begin spoiling for space. And before he knows what is happening to him, he has been ostracized, and he becomes a rogue lion that now starts visiting people's homes to eat their livestock. While a new alpha male rises to take charge of the pride. So he must be conscious of that. If he is not watching, I hope somebody will tell him to watch. Maybe that would be a good thing for the nation. That is where he is.
As we close, and also as you tell us about your own party,
because my party is a party of...
I hope you know that he is the Secretary General.
He's moved.
He's moved. All right. Let's close.
Let's talk about this with the seriousness
it deserves.
Madam Hostess. Don't treat it with levity.
I have brought it up because I understand the magnitude it carries.
We need a new dispensation, such as the party where I am SG. I do not intend to run for office. You have heard the agencies saying that they are tribeless, they are leaderless. They need to both have a tribe and to have leaders who are going to remind them of where the country has come from, where it is and where it needs to go, and who are selfless, who have the right ideas. A tribe in the sense that we now need people who think differently, regardless of their ethnicity, and they constitute a new Kenyan tribe that is going to bring about the change that we want. And the party where SG DNA is that party that's going to give the country a new DNA that is patriotic. Finally, very finally, all these other efforts cannot be trivialized and dismissed outright in the opposition space. The most critical thing just now is to know the leadership that we don't want. Before we even talk about who among these or who within the path that we are taking as DNA is likely to be the leader. We must define what we do not want. And Kenya Kwanza has demonstrated clearly the whole lot and capital that they are bad for this country.
Thank you so much. Last speaker, Dr. Barak Muluka, Strategic Communications Advisor. Asante sana for your insights. And of course, last but not least, Professor Macharia Munene, Professor of History and International Relations. And you back at home for the immense feedback and the messages that you have sent this evening. We do not go through them, but we appreciate that you are part of this very noble conversation. Asante sana, gentlemen. We have to close it at this very point. My name is Linda Alela. I look forward to see you again on Sunday for the very same, and also appreciating the team that has made the broadcast a success. Do have yourself a lovely night and week ahead. Asante.